Welcome to a special edition of Comeback, an investigative series on the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. We're your hosts, Nicholas West and Kelly Hammond.
We are going to begin this episode talking about another one of my projects that we just finished, which is the Brian Shaffer March for the Missing.
On April 15th, families, friends, advocates, and the general public all gathered together to raise awareness for the growing number of missing persons in Ohio.
Today we are going to be joined by Lori Davis, a Brian Shaffer advocate that volunteers her time to help many other missing persons in Ohio. Lori and I worked together to plan the Brian Shaffer March for the Missing.
Lori, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about the march?
Hi, Kelly, and hi, Nick. Thanks so much for having me on the Comeback podcast tonight. I truly appreciate it, and I always enjoy being able to talk to you and to the listeners of the podcast. So let me tell you a little bit about the march. The weather that week that was leading up to the march, it looked horrendous. We were supposed to get inches of rain, so we had to make some decisions as to whether we were still going to move forward with it or if we were going to reschedule. We had people flying in from out of state, so we didn't feel that rescheduling was really an option. So we went ahead and we moved forward with it, and I'm so glad that we did. The weather wasn't as bad as what we had expected. It did drizzle a few times, and it actually downpoured while we were inside the church, but that didn't affect us in any way. So we started at the College of Medicine. There was news reporters from NBC4, and they were wonderful. They actually went around and talked to every single family member of the missing, or I guess I should say every single family that was there with missing family members. So they gave them some time to, tell their stories a little bit, and I appreciated that they did that.
Lori, you have been advocating for many years. Can you tell us anything you learned from having this march?
Yes, I actually, I have a long history with missing persons. I started it, my interest in this started when Brian Shaffer disappeared, and that's been 12 years now. So I actually did learn quite a bit at this walk. I learned that families with missing persons in Ohio, their first contact needs to be the Ohio Attorney General's office. They need to reach out to them, especially if it's an adult. Kids are a little bit different. When they are entered into the NCIC, that automatically is added to the Ohio Attorney General's office. That is not the same with adults. So any family member that has an adult that's missing in Ohio, I highly recommend that if their family member is not listed on the Ohio Attorney General's office, or if they have not submitted DNA for their family, that they reach out to the Ohio Attorney General's office, the BCI unit, at 1-855-BCI Ohio. So that was good to learn, and it will change the way that I answer families of the missing when they're sending me messages or reaching out to me and contacting me. So that was the big takeaway that I would say that was a newly learned item from the march.
Lori, is there any advice you can give to other family members with missing persons about things they can do or any services that are offered to them?
So what advice do I have for the families of the missing? One, the first thing I would say is to contact the Ohio Attorney General's office. Definitely get in touch with them at 1-855-BCI Ohio. They can help you with getting the missing person report. They can also help with publishing it on their site, as well as helping with the DNA collection. Next recommendation would be that once you have a flyer, start publishing that everywhere. Send that to local media. Have your family and friends do the same. Send it to community groups where that person went missing. Get that word out there and get people looking at that flyer. The other thing I would say is that they should be creating a Facebook page for their missing person. After the march, I realized that Christy Thomas, who's been missing from Cleveland since 2015, she did not have a Facebook page that people could go to, help find Christy Thomas. So I reached out to her family. We got that page set up. within 2 days, we've already got over 100 people that have liked it, which that's 100 people, 100 sets of eyes that are looking at it. Yeah, some of those are family and friends, but that's okay. They have family and friends that they can share it with as well. I would also make sure that they are keeping the information up to date, put as many photos out there as you can, put different views of their face, front, where they're looking straight on, side views. Do things that will help people if they see that missing person out there, maybe be able to recognize them. So that's the advice I would give them right now is, reach out, make sure that they're listed on the appropriate sites, publicize that information as heavily as you can on social media. Use social media as their friend, actually, I think is what I would tell them. Send me messages if I haven't posted about their missing loved one in a while on the Missing Person from Ohio Facebook page. I'd be happy to continue to share it. There literally are so many cases that sometimes I just get overwhelmed and it's hard to remember who I need to go back and feature again. So that's some advice that I think if my family member was missing, I would be doing.
Ladies, do we think this is going to be a one-time event, or is it something you're planning to have again?
I definitely would not want this to only be a one-time event. I think this is something that we should do annually. The church has even offered to help us create some programs for the kids, for the younger people that are there that on the day of the event, to keep them occupied. It's a very rough time. We're dealing with heavy emotions. So if we can get those kids involved in something positive, she even talked that maybe they would be able to do something with grief counseling. Maybe they're drawing a picture of their missing loved one or something that's helping the children as well. So I definitely want this to happen year after year. And I want more and more families to come. I want to see all of the families of the missing in Ohio start attending this so that we just become stronger and we're bigger and we're better because we've got more brains together thinking of what we can do to help these family members. And also their families growing, because they're meeting people that are dealing with the same stuff as what they're dealing with. And it has to feel good to know that they're not alone.
I would absolutely love for this to become an annual event, not just for the awareness that we raised, but also for the relationships that we formed. I was so amazed with how many people wanted to come out and help, whether it be donating their time or donating an item. It just seems so many people wanted to help raise awareness. I had been speaking to so many families throughout all of this, and they all tell me the same thing, that the march and the podcast has given them hope and, in a sense, rejuvenated their search. And if we can do that for them and make them feel like they're not alone, then I would say what we did here was a pretty good thing.
I want to thank Lori and Kelly for all the work they did for the march. I thought it turned out really well. Besides the weather, everything ran pretty smooth. I want to thank every family member that spoke with me personally and gave me their contact information and is willing and want me and Kelly to tell their story on future episodes of Comeback. Lastly, I want to thank Derek and his wife, and I'm really, really glad I got to meet them in person. And I'm also happy that they have decided that they will answer all the questions and keep in contact with us through email at least.
To make the Brian Shaffer March for the Missing happen, we had the help of many people, and we would like to give them a special shout out and huge thanks for all that they have done.
I think it's really important that we take some time to thank those that helped make this event possible. Without everyone's work together, and we would not have been able to accomplish what we did. The first person I would really like to thank is Kelly. Kelly did wonderful things to make this event happen. We would discuss things at night, and the next day should have it ready and done. So very impressive. I would also like to give a shout out a huge shout out actually to Maureen Reinchez, the NamUs advocate. She traveled 11 hours each way. She came in, she had hotel cost and food cost, and it didn't stop her. And I really appreciate that she made this happen and that she was here for us. She's a very good friend of mine, and I just can't say enough how much I appreciate what she did. I'd also like to thank Jennifer Lester and Samantha Molnar from the Ohio Attorney General's office. They spent hours there with us on a Sunday so that we could learn more about what services they offer, so that we can share that with more families and hopefully get some answers for these families when they realize the resources that are available for them. I would like to thank the Associate Pastor Colleen Ogle and the entire King Avenue United Methodist Church. They were wonderful. They extended their church to us, and we tried really hard not to be disruptive, but they had church services going on as we were setting up, and they didn't even blink an eye. They just made us feel very welcome. The Bloom Carroll Lions Club, they provided the desserts for us, and they did it on a short notice. It was wonderful. We had an entire table full of food, and at the end, we were even able to donate it to the homeless shelter, what was left over. Then we would like to also thank the families of Andy Chapman and Carla Losey. Both of these families, they provided items for the event to make it happen. Paper products, food, drinks, they were right there with us making this event happen. We would like to thank the news channels 4, 6, and 10 for providing news time for us so that we could be seen throughout Columbus, Ohio, and people were aware that the event was happening. And 2 of the stations even did it before the event, which is really important. I love when they do the recaps, but I also love when they do it beforehand so that might generate some more interest in the community. We would like to also thank Steve Helmrich and the Aeroflix Media. They came and he had a drone, and because of the weather, they weren't able to do tons of drone video, but they also came in and videoed the speeches that happened during the event, and we appreciate that. I mean, that was on a Sunday afternoon, taking time from his family to be there, filming this for us so that we were able to remember what happened at the event and get some great shots as well. So, and everyone else that just donated items and their time. I mean, my family donated stuff. Kelly's family donated stuff. Nick donated stuff. We just came together and we did what we had to do to make it work and make this event a success. And most importantly, I want to thank the family members that attended. I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate that you came together, that I realize it's very emotional times for the families, and I appreciate that you were able to deal with those emotions and get there and share, because I do think you left with some very positive experiences. So thank you very much. And the last that I would like to thank are everyone that shared the event and helped get the word out. Without that, we probably would have had 5 people there. So thank you for doing that for us, and I hope you'll continue to do that for us in the future so that we can make sure these events are successful and that we get as many people there as we can.
Coming shortly after this episode, we'll be releasing Episode 3, Details from the Private Investigator, Don Corbett. But in the meantime, Kelly and I want to discuss what we've learned after Episode 1 and 2. So my takeaway from Episode 1 was just how much Brian's case meant to Lori. How close she became with Randy, to where they pretty much talked every day leading up to Randy's tragic death. Also, just how big of an asset Lori is, and how just she saved everything through the years on Brian's case. I think she sent me over 86 files and just a bunch of notes through emails. It was almost overwhelming. Then there was also the Crime Stoppers thing. We will address and take another look into the reward fund on a later episode. But I will say, the more I look into this, just the more sick at my stomach I get that something just isn't right with Brian's reward fund. Now on to episode 2. My conversation with John Hurst was very early on in my investigation, and I really hope Kelly and I have a chance to ask some more questions and get some more answers from John at a later date. But my takeaway from our first conversation, I think he basically told us that they believe that Brian got out of that bar without anything happening to him that night. They think for some reason Brian went down the service elevator and went out the construction exit. Not the dumpster exit, the construction area exit. I've been to the Ugly Tuna numerous times, and they've actually let me go through the whole building, not just the bar, but the whole building. I've went through every single exit, even emergency exits that still to this day do not go off when you open or shut those doors. So I do believe if Brian would have went out that way, there is a chance that the cameras wouldn't have picked him up. So in my opinion, this is the first conversation to a whole list of people that we will talk to that will tell you that there has been way too much put into Brian not being picked up on the cameras. I know that's an unpopular opinion, and I know a lot of people won't accept it, but we're 12 years into this now, and I have to firmly believe that if something would have happened to Brian Shaffer inside the Ugly Tuna that night, John Hurst and the Columbus Police Department would have been able to solve it fairly easily.
One of the first things that I took away from episode 1 was the issue with Brian Shaffer's reward and Central Ohio Crime Stoppers. Even though $23,000 was raised and privately funded from friends and family members that love Brian, Central Ohio Crime Stoppers is saying that there isn't a reward for him. I just don't think that is right to the families, and I don't feel that it's ethical at all. So we will be doing more research into Brian's reward. We have started a petition to have Central Ohio Crime Stoppers honor Brian's reward for 1 year. If you haven't yet, I suggest you take the time to sign that and help us with our cause, because just like many people have told us, when a reward is offered, you're more likely to generate tips and leads. One of the things that everyone has always wondered is exactly when the dumpsters in the area were searched. We have always assumed that it was searched on Monday or Tuesday when Brian was reported missing and when the search got into full swing. But I didn't realize how extensively family and friends started searching as of Sunday night and going around the area and checking the dumpsters, which would also put it before Rumpke's pickup time on Monday. Not only do I feel that the dumpsters were searched thoroughly, but I also feel that the dump site was searched thoroughly. They were able to pinpoint the exact location where all of the dumpsters were dumped in the area and able to take dogs in the area, and there was nothing that they found there. I really feel that this search was extensive enough to say that Brian is not in the dump and he was not in a dumpster. Speaking with Sergeant John Hurst was very eye-opening for me. It cleared up a lot of questions that I had, not only about the building, the search that was done at and around the building, but also the exits. It seems that the cameras have always played a huge role in Brian's case, and it didn't seem as important to Sergeant John Hurst as it does to most people out there. I feel that Sergeant John Hurst's opinion of Brian getting out of the bar is probably completely accurate. I don't feel that Brian is inside the walls of the bar. I don't feel that he is in the construction site. I think that Brian got out of the bar that night, and whether he met foul play at that point in time or chose to walk out on his own, he's not at the Ugly Tuna Saloona. Throughout the years, I have read several things on message boards stating that Brian met foul play by the band, Brian left with the band, so we of course had lots of questions about the band for Sergeant John Hurst, some of course which he could not answer. But I do feel that Sergeant John Hurst believes that the band had nothing to do with any kind of foul play whatsoever, but I don't feel that he really cleared up the fact if the band could have helped Brian escape. I would really like to know more about the type of search that was done with the dogs, both search and cadaver dogs, and actually the difference in where they used both. The hit behind Wendy's is kind of suspicious to me, and I would definitely like to know more about that. It could have been a fluke with the weather and the rain coming in and everything, but it also could not have been a fluke. It could have been Brian leaving, or that's where Brian met foul play. I just feel that we need a few more answers on the search and cadaver dogs. I have already started compiling a new list of questions for Sergeant John Hurst since I actually wasn't involved with the podcast at the time of his interview. If you have any questions that you would like asked to John Hurst or to suggest anything to me, you can join in the discussion board on Facebook on our Comeback group page, and we will definitely try to get answers to your questions. And now we have a special piece of information that sleuthers have been asking for a long time. According to the friends out with Brian on March 31st, 2006, Brian told them he was going to speak to the band before he disappeared.
For 6 months, we have asked family, friends, the private investigator, and then Sergeant John Hurst for the name of the band that played at the Ugly Tuna Saloona that night. After 4 months of waiting, and me sending an email at least once every 2 weeks to Sergeant John Hurst, he finally came back and sent us the name of the band. The name of the band that played that night is Rock House.
If you were a member of Rock House and played the Ugly Tuna Saloona on March 31st, 2006, we would love to speak to you, so please contact us.
Not too long ago, I reached out to someone I consider a friend now, the captain from True Crime Garage. I knew he had a music background, and I wanted to know if he could help Kelly and I track down the members of Rock House. We're not too sure if the captain is willing to come on the show or collaborate with us on an episode, but I do believe that he has tracked down one of the members of the band. Kelly and I will keep you updated on our status with tracking down the band and hopefully interviewing them. I do believe that the captain might have mentioned an update on one of their most recent episodes about the Brian Shaffer case. I don't want to speak for them, but I do believe that our conversations about the band was probably what he was alluding to. So I hope that we can collaborate and maybe reach out to this band and do an episode together.
At the end of every episode, Nick and I choose 2 missing persons from Ohio to highlight. Here are this week's cases.
Barbara Frame was last seen in Zanesville, Ohio, January 30th, 1985. Barbara was a white female that weighed approximately 125 pounds, was 5 foot 7 inches tall, with brown hair and green eyes. Barbara was 38 years old at the time of her disappearance. She would now be 71. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Barbara Frame, contact the Zanesville Police Department at 740-445-0700.
Rosemary Rapp is a missing adult from Salingville, Ohio. She was last seen on June 10, 2016. She was 68 years old at the time of her disappearance and would be 70 years old today. She is a white female that is 5 foot 3 inches tall, 190 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes. If you have any information about the disappearance of Rosemary Rapp, please contact the Carroll County Sheriff's Office at 330-627-2141. When preparing for this episode, I had actually selected missing person Hannah Geiger. She is 20 years old and she went missing from Washington Courthouse, Ohio, which is my hometown. However, sadly, Monday, Hannah was found deceased in a basement in Harrisburg, Ohio. They have arrested 2 people in connection to Hannah's death, and we hope that they seek justice to the fullest extent. Our hearts go out to the family of Hannah Geiger, and we would like to ask everyone to say a prayer for them or to just take a moment of silence to honor the life of Hannah Geiger. Nick and I have been so saddened with the news of the passing of Hannah Geiger. We had recently been speaking to a friend of the family, and we're going to put together a mini episode to try to help them get her name out there and find answers for the Geiger family. Sadly, we didn't get that opportunity, but we will continue to do the mini episodes. We will continue to raise awareness, hopefully so we never have another case like this. Nick and I are always trying to come up with new ways to raise awareness and to help families of missing persons. With Nick's job as a truck driver, it allows him to cover a lot of ground. If you have a missing person and would like Nick to distribute flyers during his travels, we will gladly do so. Contact us with one of the many methods listed in the show notes. Comeback is a privately funded podcast, and we can't think of a better way to spend our money than helping raise awareness for missing persons in Ohio. With that being said, the cost to do the podcast hinders us from guaranteeing a weekly episode on the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. If you like our podcast and would like to hear more, now you can help.
Kelly and I are excited to announce Comeback has created a Patreon page with a reward system. Our listeners can select from any tier of their choosing. The money donated will be used to help with our investigation, to produce weekly episodes, and to upgrade our equipment. You can find our Patreon page at patreon.com/comeback. Any donation really helps. Thank you.
Comeback can be found on Facebook by searching Comeback or at Find Brian Shaffer. On Twitter, you can find us at Podcast Comeback. Join in the discussion on our Comeback group page on Facebook to discuss the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. You can email us at cbpod@gmail.com. Comeback can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and many other podcast sites you enjoy. Please don't forget to sign our petition at change.org to have Central Ohio Crime Stoppers honor the privately funded reward for Brian Shaffer for 1 year. Please remember to share Comeback on all social media sites with your friends and family.
Please remember, the best way you can help our podcast grow is share, subscribe, rate, and review. Please give us a 5-star review. Even if you want to critique our show and tell us ways to get better, do it after you leave 5 stars. It really means a lot to me and Kelly. Thank you.
Remember, doing those 2 things enters you into our contest. The winner will be announced on episode 4 and will be on a future episode with us reading Brian's description.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of Comeback. We want to thank Lori Davis for joining us again, and everything she does for the missing. We want to thank Pearl Jam for allowing us to use the rights to Comeback and everything they have done for the Brian Shaffer case over the years. Eddie, the invitation's still there. A big thank you goes to Tara from the Bloody Murder Podcast. If you like true crime and comedy, I'm telling you, Bloody Murder is the best true crime and comedy out right now. To all the families that spoke with me at the Brian Shaffer March for the Missing, we look forward to speaking with you very soon, and I was honored to meet you.
And last but not least, thank you to all of the listeners out there. This wouldn't be possible without you. Remember to tune in next week for episode 3, Details from Private Investigator Don Corbett.